All right, good afternoon, everybody. So we're continuing our project on converting our EG4 6500 setup over to the Victron 10 kVA setup. Last time we did a basic unboxing of the new Victron 120 5 kVA units. And you can see them here behind me on my, what is that, my right, your left, maybe? And these things are monsters. And so this time we're working on continuing our project, trying to see if we can install a brand new 8x8 by 72 wireway and get all of our conduit in place. You can see a little bit that I've got some of the test fittings in place. I'm going to have some help because this thing's a whole lot bigger than the last one that I had to mess with. And it was hard enough trying to wrestle the old one. So we're going to try and get that all put up in place. And we are going to see if we can get some of the basic wiring in place. I don't know if I'm going to get complete wiring done this time. I'm really hoping to. I want to get the wireway up, and then I need to look at the bus bar system real quick and determine exact placement for the bus bars, because the bus bar placement is then going to determine the length and everything that I need for the DC power cables from the inverters and the charge controller. So let's get everything prepped. We've got to get the wireways holes all cut. We've got to get the conduit all cut, and then we'll get this thing mounted on the wall. So we've got a new 8x8 by 72 inch wireway to go up instead of the 4x4 by 48. Much more room to work. I want to share with you guys what I found when I opened it up. I had this on the ground in the utility room. Apparently the kittens found it and decided to use it as their play place. All right, so I've got my new wireway temp mounted, and I just kind of wanted to show you how I'm getting my conduit all lined up. Now, you don't have to use EMT like I am. You don't have to use the wireway. I'm just doing this because I like the look of this as opposed to the liquid tight. Liquid tight would be a whole lot faster, a whole lot easier probably, but I like this look a lot better. So I'm using my laser level to line up the edge of each device to a cardboard template that I made at the bottom, and then I can mark my holes. And I did that all the way down. Well, I got all my holes pre-drilled and prepped for the hole punch. I'll have to say that pre-drilling all this stuff is probably the least enjoyable part of the entire project because of all that stuff that just gets shot at you. I made the mistake of trying to pre-drill all these holes with shorts on and sandals. And when hot metal falls on your tiny digits, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. So let's see if I remember how this works. And thankfully the instructions are printed right here on the sides. So install the screw. This part of the die goes up on top. And this part goes underneath. And what actually happens is this hydraulic pump pulls the cutter up into the receiver. For a perfect 1.25 inch hole. Now if I could just figure out a way to make this shaft smaller for the same size cutting die, so I don't have to pre-drill the hole so big. And now I only have to do this Oh, 17 more times. So I'll finish this up and I'll show you when we get this thing back on the wall. So I just thought I'd share this little, I don't know, tip, problem, friction point, I don't know. So you've got 1.25 inches here. These 4 are also, should be about 1 inch. So the inch fits in here, inch fits in here, but these three are extremely tight. And I'm guessing that's because it's designed for these, but it's like it's just barely not big enough. So what I had to do to get these to fit in here is I actually had to take one of these and take it to my bench grinder and kind of grind down the teeth a little bit so that it gives it a smaller profile so it fits in. It's still extremely snug to get up in here. And you gotta work it a little bit to get it in there, but it actually goes up all the way. And I don't know if it's, the holes are, you know, a hair smaller, plus the powder coating just adds to the thickness or what, but a little cheat was just grinding down the teeth a little bit on these fittings to get them to fit all the way up inside. I'm really hoping that my lines line up properly, but if not, everything is very loose. And then I think the way that the solar charge controller is designed, I might end up just having to buy more of these grommets. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So inside the charge controller, they've got PV2 and PV1, and they have it designed so that you feed one single wire up, one positive, one negative, one positive, one negative for your PV. And then over here, there's no real space for anything other than your cable to slide up in here. And you actually have to leave this horizontal slot because you have to come up with your cable and then twist it a little bit to get it to come and line up on the lug. Because this one might come in straight, but this one doesn't. It's offset a little bit. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is taking some of the other grommets and putting them in here for the battery cables coming up to the solar charge controller. And then I'll buy some more of the single grommets for down here. Because the only other way to make this work up here is to drill it out and make it larger, and I really don't want to do that. So I had to call in some extra hands because this thing is so long, and trying to line up 14 different conduit sections is probably going to be impossible for one person to do with as long and as bulky as this is without shimming it up like crazy. And so I get my wife down here and my son down here, and between the three of us, 2 of us can hold it and the other one can line up all the conduit pieces. So yours should slide almost all the way to the trim.
I'm on the trim.
Okay. So then we just push some upward pressure on it. And then Ian, you find the one that's sticking. How come it's not sliding all the way up?
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Right there. There's the first one. Okay. And then you just find the next one that starts to stick. We'll try and relieve a little bit of pressure without dropping them out. It's like playing the xylophone. You're going around until you find the one that sticks. Right there. Okay. Find the next one. You still good, Ian? All right, you can see we were able to get everything in and lined up. My microphone is about dead, so I have to charge that up. So I'm gonna work on, while that's charging, I'm gonna work on just straightening up all the fittings and getting everything snugged down. And then we'll jump on over to looking at the bus bar situation and look at the, the Victron Power In, the Victron Lynx Shunt, and the Lynx Distributor. I forgot, they're all Lynx. So Lynx Power In, Lynx Shunt, and Lynx Distributor. And we'll look at how all that's going to work together and how that actually simplifies a lot of this installation, because it's all together and it's comes with fuses and stuff like that. So we'll look at that here in just a few minutes. While everything's still charging, even my phone battery is almost dead, we've got all the connections all tightened up. And one thing that I'll share, I don't think that these are made for EMT conduit, and that's why they didn't have these fittings over here, because they're extremely tight together. And so they really did not want to lock into place. And you'll see that some of these didn't even want to get super tight. I might have to get a little creative with a dab of glue or something just to hold them down so that they can still protect the wires feeding through the conduit. But even down here, this spacing just does not allow these to lock in all the way. So this is snug and tight. It's not going anywhere, but it does not give you enough space around the outside to lock in, because you can see over here we've got some spacing, and as we get further over here, that it's not tight. So it doesn't seem designed for that. Granted, I made it work just because I like the conduit look. It looks much nicer and cleaner, even though on the charge controller I'm not going to be able to do conduit work just due to the way that everything runs. So you'll see wires over here, but over here for everything else you'll see conduit. I also got the ground bar mounted inside. I need to check my spacing a little bit because I kind of see a gap right there. So I'll have to pop that off and make sure that that's nice and flush. So I wanted to look at the bus bar configuration that came in this 10 kVA kit. So that includes the Lynx Power In, the Lynx Shunt, and the Lynx Distributor. So let's take a look at what's under the hood with these. So they'll actually connect together on these posts, and each of these has bus bars on it that's rated for 1,000 amps, which is just amazing. Stop and think of how much inverting power you would need for 1,000 amps. It's just ridiculous. But you can see how thick that bus bar is. And if we grab our tape measure, that's a 1/4 inch thick bus bar. So on here, you have protective covers. So underneath is your negative bus bar. Your negative will screw in down here. This cover will close, and then your positive will come on top of it. So for a visual example, your negative would go underneath. And actually, this little tab is going to have to come off anyways. So twist that off. So your negative goes underneath, your positive goes on top. So then your battery cables are always visually associated to each other because they're stacked right on top of each other. So you've got 4 connections here. We'll come up to the shunt. So your shunt is down here across the negative, and then you'll have, I believe it's a mega fuse across the top here, which is basically a full system fuse protecting your batteries from your inverters if you had a surge from either direction. So that fuse would blow, protecting the other side of the equipment. And then you've got communication built into here, which actually will tie directly into the Lynx Distributor. But then you also have, I believe this is the VE CAN. I don't remember exactly. They've got several communication protocols, but this will connect down into the servo so that you can get the actual amps crossing back and forth through your system. And then your Lynx Distributor is basically the same thing as your Lynx Power In, except it has a built-in circuit board with fuses as well for visual indication, plus reporting back to the shunt, which then reports back to the servo of fuses being blown on your inverters or your charge controllers. So you'll have this little, it's basically an old phone cable, which will plug in from here. You'll route it down and out of the distributor, and then it'll route up and in and plug into your shunt, just like that. And for connecting all of this together, each of these has a protective cover on the end, which prevents any accidental fingers, things from falling into the bus bars. So you're going to remove that protective cover, and that's going to expose the bus bar connections. I'm sure the manual tells you exactly the proper size. This fits a 13 millimeter. So we'll remove these nuts. And this is actually going to be in preparation of mounting this on the wall. So you've got your regular washer, lock nut washer, and your nut. And so from reading the documentation, this has to be in a particular order. The batteries on the Lynx Power In have to be on the left side of your Lynx Shunt. And then your inverters and your charge controllers need to be on the right-hand side, because that calculates what goes in and goes out of the batteries. Because if it was reversed, you would end up seeing your capacity going down when you're charging, and it goes up when you're discharging, and you don't want that. So it has to be batteries on the left, inverters and charge controller on the right. So these are just protective covers on the end, and save these, because if you ever have to take this stuff off, you can reapply the covers. And then they've got them pre-drilled already, and all you need to do, drop it right on top. The gasket will slide right into the Power In. Put your washer on, your lock washer, and your nuts. And then I will put on screen what the torque value is supposed to be for these connections. And I will make sure that I go back and re-torque these. But for now, I will just snug them up. But yes, Victron does a very good job of telling you in all their documentation what the torque values are for all of your connections. And so now, this is one solid piece. And so we'll do the same thing on the opposite side for the distributor. And I believe you can expand these out. I don't remember exactly how many. I'll look up and put it on the screen as to how many you can have connected together. I believe this side you're basically limited on your amperage. But I want to say this side for your distributor, because it's got the circuit board, so there's a logic assignment. There's an actual ID assigned to this, so that your servo knows exactly what device potentially has blown the fuse. And you can see right here, you've got your dip switches. I want to say you can have 4 of these in line. But again, I'll clarify and put that on the screen. All, again, is going to be based on the total amperage draw of your inverters. Tighten these down. And again, now we have one solid bus bar. our communication cable. We'll click in here. There's a little notch down here underneath so that your cover won't pinch. And there's one on actually both sides. It is tight. So if you've got somebody with smaller fingers, use them. Okay, and so I see what my problem was. So you have to have the pins facing up, the locking tab facing down. There, so that wasn't that bad. You just got to put it in the right orientation. Use the protective groove, and then your cover will come down right on top of it, like so, without pinching the wire. And so your kit would have come with Cat 5 cables, and you'll end up plugging one in down here, and then the other end will go over to your servo. And that will allow for communication and data to come from your shunt and your distributor. And then one last thing, since I've got everything opened up, so you'll have two big fuses, or you'll have one massive monster fuse, which this is rated for 300 amps, I believe. In fact, this might be 325. And that will go on these two posts here, obviously underneath the nuts, but that will sit right there. And then you'll have your positive connection up here, your negative connection under here, and then your fuse will connect. In fact, these are a little snug too. Yep. So yeah, you might have to work a little bit to get these fuses on. These are 125 amp fuses, but you'll end up having, and then there's also a specific orientation with these as well. So I want to say you put your positive lug down first, and then your fuse sits on top of the positive lug, and your fuse gets sandwiched between the lug and the lock washer. Or not the lock washer. Your fuse will get sandwiched between the lug and the washer. But this is the basic bus bar setup, where in the past I had to run my two negative connections into my shunt because I didn't have enough bus bars. Now I have a set of bus bars strictly for my battery connections, and I have a set of bus bars for my inverter and charge controller connections. So I will end up having one extra space left on this side because I'll have my two inverters and my charge controller. But it's gonna look so much nicer and cleaner. So if I close all this up, and then this side, the distributor actually has indicators. So it'll show red if you have a blown fuse or you're missing a fuse, and then it'll show green if you have a good connection. So this is what it's gonna look like. And then you'll have your battery connections, and then your inverter connections, and then your charge controller connections in one nice, slick looking bus bar configuration. And so total length on this, from one end to the other, including the bus bar terminal ends that are sticking out, you're at about 27.5 inches. And then height-wise, you're at about 6.5 inches. Granted, you're gonna have little wires and stuff hanging down, so you'll have to make sure that you give yourself adequate space for that. But I think it's gonna look nice. I think it's gonna look very clean, especially if you're going for that clean look. Some people don't care. Some people like to admire the work. I don't mind seeing the work. I really don't. That's kind of why my batteries are the DIY batteries, and they're, you know, open shelves. But, you know, there's something to say about having just kind of a plug-and-play system that has the built-in fuses, that has the built-in shunt, that allows you to keep your battery connections nice and clean, all in one thing. But the 1000 amp bus bars are really going to give you the ability to expand your system and have those larger inverters and not have to worry about losses. So I figured I'd share this part of the process as you're trying to, figure out your layout and everything. From your bus bar standpoint, I was trying to decide, do I want to run it horizontally or do I need to run it vertically? So vertically will make the ends down here basically hang down underneath this plywood, but it would make it that all of my battery connections would have an easy path to come down and connect because the distributor would be right up here on top. Horizontally, it looks a whole lot better to me. And I'm trying to use the cables that it came with so that I don't have to remake anything. And so I'm looking to see, all right, well, if I put the 5-foot cable on this leftmost inverter, because all the power cables are going to have to come down into the trough, come out through the bottom, and then loop down and up. Will they reach? And it's pretty close right now. I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm actually going to have to put one hole in the bottom of the trough and then one at a time just drop the battery cables down and see if I have enough room to loop down and up. The 5-footer is going to be the closest, so I might end up having to... I'd like to keep everything in order so that the leftmost inverter is the leftmost connection. But with the length of the battery cable, I might not be able to do that unless I take this whole thing and I shift it to the left a little bit. The other thing that I need to keep in mind is my battery connections from my battery rack. I need to have those come. I'm going to have my battery disconnects over here somewhere. So I might have to lengthen those cables to have them come down and go over to this bus bar, which it's not the end of the world because I would have to remake those anyways. But at least it's just kind of the process. You're looking to see what's going to work best. And that's the whole thing with all of this. That's why I made the cardboard templates, so that you could put the cardboard on the wall and see exactly where things could end up laying out. Make sure you got your proper spacing, make sure you've got your distance. And you got to do the same thing with all your bus bar connections. You temporarily hang it, look at it, and see how things are going to lay out and how they're going to fall, and see if it's going to work out best for you. Well, I never quite knew exactly where I was going to end up stopping. Honestly, as I'm going through the project, I don't even really know how much footage I'm actually getting that's going to be usable. And so it's really not until I end up editing the video together when I really find out, all right, where's a good stopping point? And so getting the wire way up and getting the bus bar situation looked at and trying to figure out the layout and everything, it seemed like a great stopping point for this video because it's, again, and they're getting long, but they're getting long because I'm trying to get as much into each video as I can so that we can get the install done and then really start getting into the meat of testing these inverters out. Testing out the entire system, really. I'm going to do my best to try and get more than one video out a week. With the hours worth of footage that I have, it should be easy to make a couple of videos. It's just how much editing is going to take in order to get somewhat of a decent compilation of clips together. Because it seems like every day I'm coming downstairs and I'm finally getting this piece done, finally getting that piece done. So that's kind of why you're seeing from this direction instead of seeing from that direction, because that's a whole lot further than what you've seen so far. Don't want to spoil anything. Next time we should be able to get the bus bar situation all wired in, get the batteries hooked up, and even get the charge controller hooked up so that we can start utilizing some of the power coming from the sun and not just wasting these sunny days. So with that, I'm gonna let y'all go. Y'all stay safe, stay cool, and we'll catch up with you later.